Welcome to another Online Personals Watch CEO interview. I'm joined today by Mike Krosky, who is the CEO of cherryblossoms.com. Welcome to the interview, Mike.
Hi, thank you very much.
And I believe we have a mutual friend in Andrew Conroe from Friend Finder some years ago.
Yes, that's right. I've known Andrew for quite a few years.
So let me start off with our typical question. What is Cherry Blossom's founding story? How was the company started and how did you get involved?
Well, the company was actually started back in the 1970s, early 70s, and there was a gentleman that was wanting to find a wife from another country, and then another guy said, "Hey, I think I can help you do that." And they took out some personal ads and they placed them in some different countries like the Philippines and Japan and whatever, and they got some pretty good responses from those ads. And then they started thinking like, maybe this could be a business. So the initial Cherry Blossoms was started back in 1973, 74, and they just started to place these personal ads for people, and then they decided to do a small publication, and they did that for quite a few years. And then, it was an interesting story that I was living in Houston back in the 90s, and I was talking to one of my neighbors, and his name was Joe, and he was a real nice guy, but just like a regular guy. He wasn't, like Tom Cruise or Tom Selleck or any of those cats. And I'm talking to him, and as we're talking, up walks this very, very beautiful Filipina gal, and I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking like, oh, I just, finally here she comes. My dreams have been answered or something. And she walks up, and she puts her arm around Joe, and I was kind of like, like, wow, this is pretty remarkable. I mean, I was in pretty good shape and, young guy and whatever. And I thought, holy mackerel, how did he swing this one? And anyway, so she was just there for, maybe 4 or 5 minutes, and then off she went. And I said to Joe, I says, if you don't mind me asking, I go, how did you meet this woman? And he said, oh, through a company called Cherry Blossoms. And I'm like, well, what do they do? And he said, oh, they're an internet company. Well, actually, not internet at that time. They were an international company that helped people, meet for love and marriage. And they published a magazine, and he actually had a copy of the magazine. So he gave me that copy, and I looked at it, and I thought, wow, this is really interesting. And so I, got the current magazine from the company, and I wrote to some ladies, and I just found the whole idea of it fascinating. So I started to interact a little bit like that, and then this is like probably '93, and and the internet's starting to kind of come around, and I've always been really interested in computers and communication and different things. So I started thinking like, wow, this would be a perfect thing to have on the internet, and so I started interacting with the company about that, and they were very interested because they weren't on the internet at all. This is like, probably now late 94. And so I put together a little plan and decided to move to Hawaii and see what I could do.
So tell us about the genesis, because this transition of kind of old media moving towards new media, internet, is quite fascinating. I mean, how quick did that happen? How quickly did Cherry Blossoms move online?
Well, I went out there. I came to Hawaii in early '95, and I wanted to look at what would it take to bring them onto the internet. And I had very little experience with it, but I felt very confident about it. So, I just kind of looked at their structure, and I kind of saw how they were doing what they were doing now with the magazine. And my initial idea was, because we had a good revenue stream coming from from the magazine, so I didn't want to just cut that off. So we just created a website, and we started to put women on the website, and it was more almost like the magazine, but online. There wasn't a lot of communication. Like initially, you couldn't send emails to anybody, and there wasn't much there yet. I mean, it was really the very beginning. It was '95. I think there was maybe one or two companies that had any kind of an internet personals presence at that time. So it was the very, very beginning of it, and we got that part going, and then people started to register on the website, men and women. So all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's not just a magazine on the internet now. It's now a magazine on the internet, and people are starting to register. So we started to develop communication devices such as, sending email messages and things like that. And, it grew quite quickly, actually.
And of course, there was Dr. Andrew Cronru back in '94 who started Web Personals, although that was pre-doctor, because I don't think he had his Stanford PhD at that point. It was when he started Friend Finder in '96 that he emerged with he had the PhD. So what were sites which you admired back then? What were parts of your inspiration set? Because there were just a handful of dating sites back then.
Well, there really wasn't almost anything. There was, like you mentioned, there was Web Personals, and I think Andrew sold that to some group, and then he started working on his Friend Finders. So that was coming, and another friend of mine, I don't know if you know Lee Zier, but he had a company called, I think it was called what do you call it? Let me think. A foreign affair, foreign relation. I always forget which is which. But he had one for Russian and stuff, and then he was kind of going in that direction for a while. And then I don't remember what year it was, but it was like maybe '96 or '97 or someplace. And we're talking on the phone, and he said, Mike, I think the bigger market's here in the U.S. And he had coined and had the domain for the kiss.com. So he started kind of going in that direction. So Andrew was doing Friend Finders, and Lee was doing kiss.com, but I was kind of invested in the international business more, and I stayed more focused on that. And so they kind of went in their directions, and I just kept doing cherry blossoms and growing that international market.
How would you define cherry blossoms fit in the market compared to iDating and compared to other premium international dating sites?
I think that there's a lot of companies out there doing good stuff, and I think a lot of companies have the same goal, that they want to help men and women meet for love and marriage and stuff. It's a very interesting business, and it is growing because the internet is making the whole world, smaller, so to say. But, Cherry Blossoms, I guess if I could say anything about us is that we are the company that back in the early '70s started the business of helping men and women meet for love and marriage. And here we are 38 and a half years later. We're still here, and we're still doing it. And, we have over 5,000 client marriages every year still. So it's pretty fun. It's pretty exciting. It's enormously rewarding as, we get our testimonials in and people calling in and they found their true love and all that stuff. So it's a great thing. It's very, very fun work.
That's phenomenal. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
What's the future hold?
The future is interesting, because there is a lot of competition out there, so we continue to look at how do we keep enhancing and improving our website. We've got a couple things that we're doing this year that we're very excited about. And one of them is just much better communication software for not just for sending email messages and doing that, but also for our chat. We have a chat software that we use, and it's a pretty good software, but we see some really nice improvements that we want to make on that, so we're working on that. But a lot of times, when our clients are chatting on the internet, and true for me as well, I kind of use for that day whatever's working best. Sometimes Yahoo works great, sometimes it doesn't. Here's a billion-dollar company, and sometimes their chat doesn't work well at all. Depending on where I am. I might be in the Philippines someplace or China, whatever. In some places it works great and some it doesn't. Skype is often very good, but sometimes Skype doesn't work good. And so here we are. We're kind of a smaller company, but sometimes our chat software works better than those other guys. So I basically go and I tell the same thing to our clients. Just use whatever's working best for that day. Don't get so stuck, I have to use this or I have to use that. Have the goal be that you're going to have fun and have a good chat.
And what's your thoughts on video? Because that really does help bridge the divide. It's helping the world become a smaller place in many ways.
Yeah, I think video is just great. I often talk to men and women that aren't using video at all yet, and I just kind of shrug my shoulders and say, try it. Try using video, because that really does answer all the questions. Back in the day, when we first started on the internet, there wasn't any of the video, so it was still, you're looking at a picture, you're writing letters, you're getting pictures. Sometimes you're doing that stuff, but you haven't really seen that person yet. And I think that the advent of the video is probably one of the best improvements that we have on the internet, and I think that that'll obviously just continue to grow and be of great value for people.
I think the premium international dating companies and iDating companies are sitting on the kind of fringe of a very interesting question. And on the one side, some would argue that it's not really possible to build a relationship with somebody that you haven't met via computer-mediated communication. Others would argue that it is, and I'm sure you would argue that it is. What are the challenges with this medium? I mean, people do get very emotionally involved. They can fall in love online, especially on video.
Sure.
What's your thoughts?
My challenges, or the challenges and my thoughts about all that is basically that no matter how you meet, there's no way to circumvent the process of getting to know each other and asking good questions. So, for example, a guy meets a gal at a sports club or something, and they're very physically attracted to each other, and they go and they eat and they drink a little bit, and everything's great. And the next thing they're being very, very intimate very, very quickly, and perhaps they really don't know each other very well at all. And you see that all the time. I talked to a friend recently that they had totally fallen in love, and everything was so great, and everything, and oh, blah blah blah. And then 2 weeks later, oh, well, that's over. You know how it goes. And, so that happens all the time. And I think sometimes one of the advantages of interacting with people on the internet is the fact that, you start to talk and ask more questions because, you're not there yet, and when you're going to go there, it's going to require a little bit more effort and a little bit more investment than just going down the street and picking her up and taking her out to the movies or to the dinner. So because you have more investment in those things that you're going to have to do, it seems on the internet that people are taking the time to ask better questions and to really try to get to know each other more. And I think that's a wonderful thing. So I think overall, I think that the internet and interacting, and if you ask the right questions, that you can certainly get to know someone very, very well.
And of course, you can help speed up that communication by offering mobile. What's your mobile offering at this stage?
Yeah, right now our mobile is just it's not great yet. We're in the middle of our work for doing RWD, which is responsive web design. So basically, we probably have another 2 or 3 months before we're ready to release this. But basically what it's going to be is that, when you go on the Cherry Blossoms, if you're using your mobile, then our software recognizes, oh, he's on a mobile, and you are going to use different pages than if you're coming on a laptop or if you're coming on, through a different, desktop or anything else like that. So based on whatever device you're using, then our software is going to adjust for that and give you a display that's, most useful.
Right. Would you describe Cherry Blossoms as a premium international dating site, or is it? I'm not sure it's premium. It's actually the price points are a bit lower. Well, what are your price points?
Yeah, it's a great question. You're involved in marketing and have been for a long, long time now, and marketing is always an interesting thing. We're not premier, I guess, in the sense of our cost, because we're still very, very reasonable on our cost. I mean, there's plenty of sites out there that are quite a bit more expensive than we are. We are premier in the sense that, we offer, high quality services, and we have so many marriages every year. So in terms of our product, I think we're premier. In terms of marketing, I think we still have some room to do, to go there. There is some good competition out there, and there are some companies doing good work. But as you see in any product, just like with McDonald's or something, I mean, they're certainly not selling the best hamburgers in the world yet. A lot of people go there. So there's always that balancing thing on, what business do we want to be in? And primarily we want to be in the business of helping people find their true love, and that's what we kind of stay focused on the most.
Got you. So would you say it's a little bit more skewed towards iDating?
When you say iDating, can you explain that to me slightly? Sorry.
Well, internet dating is 100% online. I mean, I see premium international dating sites offering a bit more on-the-ground services and doing the events and a little bit more hand-holding in person. I think that's one of the key differentiators of the industry. And it is a little bit muddy, and you're in that muddy zone because you've got from working with in the past and knowing Cherry Blossoms a little in the past. It was very much online. International, but online. What's been introduced? What is there in the way of on-the-ground services?
Yeah, I get you now. So yeah, I would say still we're strictly on the on the iDating aspect of as far as the internet dating. There are some companies that are doing some tours and they do some other things, but we haven't. Years ago, we did tours. Years and years ago, back in the 70s, 80s, and even in the 90s, we did tours to the Philippines and such. And then the government came out with their EMBRA, and basically they're looking and saying, hey, you're a matchmaking company. I mean, that's what you're doing. And in their wisdom, they decided, well, we want to regulate companies that are doing this type of business. And so we looked at that and we kind of thought about it and we said, we're really not a matchmaking company. We're really not that much different from any other internet dating site that's on the web, because we're not putting people together saying, oh, you should be with this person or that person like that. We never felt like that's our place. We felt like we wanted to provide a great quantity of nice women and nice men and give them tools by which they can, search for themselves and find somebody. So anyways, with the EMBRA thing, we just kind of got away from the tour stuff because, companies that are doing that, in the Philippines especially, they're kind of walking a little bit of a gray line that's a little, in our experience, a little bit, I don't know. I guess, how would you say it? Maybe it's just a little bit dangerous as far as what the United States government wants to do, as well as the Philippine government. Because the Philippines, for example, they're not saying, hey, come open up your shops over here. They don't want that still because they had problems way back in the 70s.
Gotcha. What countries are you in now?
Well, I mean, based on our database, we're in well over 100 countries around the world. We still have our greatest presence in the Philippines. China's coming on stronger. South American countries are still pretty strong. We have some Russians as well, Russian, Ukraine, and from the Eastern European areas. But that's not as big as There's many companies that there's a lot more. But we always have the experience that we seem like even if we have a smaller number of people coming to the site from different countries, the ones that come, they seem like they're a little bit more sincere. And we think maybe that has to do with the fact that we've been doing this for almost 40 years now, so maybe that name recognition has some value.
Mike Krosky, you're the CEO of Cherry Blossoms. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.